Hello, and welcome to Movie Mayhem here at Suspiria Works Cinema, where we watch all the movies. Today we got a random movie review, but I'm doing this a little bit different. I'm going to do the entire Nightmare on Elm Street series. I'm not doing the remake because it's not part of this box set that we're going to review here. So instead of doing each film individually, which most people have seen, you don't really need reviews, I'm going to kind of run down all of them, explain the things I like, don't like. Nightmare on Elm Street it was a great concept. I loved it as a horror movie. As far as the Freddy character, I think he's really cool, he's entertaining. I'm not sure if the movies really reflect what he could have been or should have been in many cases. As a result, I'll admit Nightmare on Elm Street series is definitely not one of my favorite horror series. And I'll explain why as I go through each of them. So, we will start off with the first movie, Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street, made in 1984 by the then nearly unknown New Line Cinema. New Line took a chance putting out this movie that couldn't find distribution, and to their credit, they now are all multi-millionaires, as I'm sure most of you know. Wes, with the original Nightmare on Elm Street, created this character, something a little different than had been seen in horror movies. He wasn't a physical being. He was, something that anyone could relate to. Everyone has to sleep. Not everyone goes camping in the woods, like Jason. Not everyone's going to be afraid of just some creepy guy walking down the street, like a Michael Myers. A lot of people say, well, I just shoot him or punch him. Sure, they show in those movies. That ain't going to help. But it's not quite as all-encompassing as someone who can come into your dreams while you're sleeping, when most people feel vulnerable, they feel helpless. Even when you're in a real dream or nightmare, you have that feeling like you can't control it. And Wes had the idea to bring in a killer from this, where he can do this stuff to you in a dream, and it actually affects you in real life. It's a brilliant idea. The first movie, features a bunch of unknown actors with the exception of John Saxon. Now, obviously, they're all well known now. Heather Langenkamp, Johnny Depp, Robert Englund, I don't remember all the other actors' names, but you know the cast. And in the first movie, it's very scary. Freddy is dark, he's menacing, he's creepy. It works on all levels. I think the first film is a great horror film. Definitely the best in the series for me. Actually, if I'm forced to say it, it's probably Wes Craven's best movie for me. So, you've got this dream killer guy, and terrorizing the teenagers. It's very home-hitting as far as how the frights work. There is no joking. Most people are going to be familiar with Freddy. They remember him from all the joking and the one-liners. There is none of that. This guy is a mean son of a bitch. He's a known child murderer. It's one of the things I didn't like with the remake is they they totally turned him into a child molester, and that ruins it for me. It's not quite the same. You have a guy who just takes kids and likes to murder them. That's an evil bastard. It's not something you even really hear about. You always, you hear on the news about creepy child molesters, so it kind of makes it not as horrifying. This was just a guy who was a very evil man. There's no explanation for it other than he wants to keep killing these kids, so now he can come back in their dreams. It's very well done how the adults just don't believe them. It gives that feeling of helplessness. As a kid growing up, as a teenager, and other times you often have this feeling like you can't get help from adults or superiors, or however you want to look at it, and that the film really emphasizes that. So there's some excellent gore, and it's very eerie, very, very brutal types of killings. It's believable. The ending, The ending I thought was great, had there been no sequels. The sequels, one of the big problems I have in On Elm Street is how bad they are at keeping continuity between the sequels, especially with the end of one, the beginning of another. You know, with half of them, they don't connect at all. They don't even try. They barely remember the movies that occurred before it, and that kind of bugs me. But the way the original Nightmare on Elm Street ends is great. I love it. It has that very Halloween-esque. The killings are going to go on, and it leaves you wanting more and imagining more. You know, outside of New Nightmare, I don't think there ever needed to be a sequel because these were very well done. Of course, they're going to make them. And they did make them. Only a year later, we had Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. This is a lot of people's hated entry into the series, and partly I can understand why, and I'm going to argue against it as with some justification. 2 is still a horror movie, and they really lose that, starting with 3, and then 4, 5, and 6, just no horror left at all. 2 is still a horror movie, and Robert Englund's portrayal of Freddy in 2, I like. I think he's very scary. He's still terrifying. He's still a mean bastard. Jack Sholder directed the second one, and he doesn't really have a lot of movies to his credit. He has some great lighting, actually. The atmosphere of the entire movie, thumbs up, beautiful. The acting is fine. The main guy, Jesse, you're led to believe, I guess, he's being possessed by Freddy and actually performing the killing, like on the gym teacher. That had to be what happened. It feels disjointed. And then they have the scene at the swimming pool where Freddy is in the real world, but he's burst out of Jesse's body, so I guess he's he's kind of managed to come into the real world. But I'm not sure why you want to do that, because it was established in the first one, when he comes into the real world, he's vulnerable to regular attacks. I mean, Heather Langenkamp kind of kicked his ass. So why would he want to be in the real world? And we're shown he goes back into the dream world at the end of the first one. So for reasons that make no sense, he wants to be in the real world in the second movie. He does it, kills some people. He's fairly brutal and scary. The movie, a lot of people have joked about its gay undertones. I mean, yeah, there's some guys in a locker room, and the one scene with the with the coach is a little bit, but I don't know. I don't really buy it. I don't. It didn't seem to. Never bothered me. I never really thought of it that way. So, who cares? The end of the movie is stupid. That's the best way to explain it. The dogs with the baby faces. And I saw the documentary and understand they fought some budget things. It comes off hokey. The whole "I love you, Jesse," killing him and bringing him back from Freddy being possessed. It's almost as stupid as flooding New York sewers with toxic waste and turning adults into little kids. So the ending's dumb. But watching the rest of the movie, I enjoy it. I still enjoy the horror aspects of the film. As a whole, it falls weak. So after part 2, it seems like they kind of sat back and said, well, let's rethink this. They pulled Wes back in to help with some writing. And in '87, we got Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, which, of course, was a huge hit. Director Chuck Russell had taken this. It's one of his first feature films. He went on to direct a lot of great stuff. The Blob remake. He did Mask. Some other movies. It brought back Heather Langenkamp, John Saxon, new character played by Patricia Arquette, and Larry Fishburne was in it too. A lot of really good actors. This takes place, again, in the continuity of the first movie. The second movie is completely ignored. But, of course, we never know what happened at the end of the first movie, given the third movie. They never mention it, they never explain it, so what happened? We know she went to school and got educated in dream studies, which, you know, they I guess that makes sense, and it's a good idea, which lets her come to the mental hospital where all the kids are now in order to research their dreams. So in this one, Freddy's back to a full dream guy. He doesn't want to be in the real world, and these are the last of the Elm Street kids being killed off by Freddy. Makes sense. I like the continuity. You can tell Wes had some involvement because it ties in well with the story of the first one. The good part about the movie is it's still horrific, especially in the killings. It's very dark. Freddy is still fairly scary. And even some of the hokey one-liners where he, you know, the Zsa Zsa scene, and he does the "welcome to prime time, bitch," he's angry. He's not being smarmy, he's not being cute. He's being cruel. And I like how that came across. Englund's performance was very solid throughout the movie. He was great. The only problem I really had with the movie was the controlling your dream aspect. All these kids learn they can control their dreams. If they control their dreams, well, Freddy supposedly can't get them, right? Because they can be anything they want. Well, had there probably never been any other sequels, it might have been a little better. You got the one, Patricia Arquette's character who can do mediocre gymnastics in her dream. That's the best she could come up with. Kincaid, he is strong, and not Superman or Hulk strong. He's kind of strong. That's about it. The one girl, she turns into a punk. She gets a mohawk, wears leather, and carries 2 switchblades. I'm not sure where the idea, you know, where does that, how does that help you? The only one that made sense was the kid that wants to be the wizard master, this all-powerful wizard. Now, again, he's an all-powerful wizard who can blow up a chair, and that's it. You know, the kids they supposedly get this control of the dream to have all these powers and do this great stuff, and they all just get killed so quick. It's just, it's so futile. It's like He-Man grabbing his sword and by the power of Grayskull, and then Skeletor goes up and stabs him and he dies. Well, what was the point then of having the power? That's my big problem with the movie, and it started the downhill slide of not being scary. There's some cool Harryhausen style skeleton battle at the end, which I totally dug. Love seeing John Saxon again, and it ends fairly nicely. You know, you get the backstory of Freddy with his mother, how all that happened, and the ending was good. I mean, the movie did so well. There had to be a sequel. Honestly, it could have ended there, the way they tied it up, and you know, the story after this part, the stories are just stupid. So that brings us to 1 year later, when they crank out Part 4, The Dream Master. Now, they couldn't even get Patricia Arquette back. They had to replace her with Tuesday Night, who played the same character. And this was Renny Harlin's, not his first movie, but his big Hollywood debut. Renny Harlin's gone on to do a ton of stuff. Some great, some of it, you know, sank entire studios, like Cutthroat Island. I don't know if it was all in the script or if it's Harlin's direction, but at this point, there was nothing scary from the beginning of this movie to the end. It's brightly lit. I mean, it looks good. It's competently filmed. Cinematography's great. It's just not a horror movie. It's a fun movie where kids die in really weird ways. And that brings me to another problem. They have Freddy, they did all this work to kill him in 3, and then he just comes back and forth. Okay, why? You know, the dog pissing fire is pretty great, actually. It's pissing on all the continuity of the other movies. There was no real good reason. We're bringing Freddy back because we want more money. And he comes back. And they do more killing, and this is, like, some of the kills are just bizarre. The one kid, Joey, gets pulled into the bed by a girl, which ends up being Freddy, and she kills him. Fine. But his mother then comes in, and Joey is inside of a waterbed. a completely sealed, full waterbed, underneath it, trapped inside, dead. Now, I'm willing to give a lot of suspension of disbelief on things, but everybody brushes that off like, he committed suicide. How could he have done that? What did he do? Did he teleport inside the frickin' bed and drown himself? All the parents brush it off, all the students are brushing this off, but that makes no fucking sense. And that scene alone drives me crazy the entire movie. It's just stupid. This goes on, they all die, and Kristen's character gives her power to the new girl, so she can pull people into the dreams, and when they die, she inherits some of their personality and she takes a little item from them, and I guess that's supposed to matter. And we get some completely new backstory about these dream guardians of gates and other nonsense. And supposedly Freddy's going to be this big master of the bad gate, and she's going to become the master of the good gate. Kind of makes sense, but then he would have had tons of experience, and now Freddy's trapping their souls? Why? And who cares? They've got some other scenes where her brother, he does karate, which was, a big trend in the 80s especially, and he fights Freddy, but Freddy's invisible. He knows karate, great. He just gets his ass kicked. Why show them fight? And it goes on fairly long, but what's the point of having him fight when I already know from the beginning of the movie nothing they do is ever going to help them? Don't show them every one of them trying to be tough and fight. First of all, why is everybody so damn tough? This is a problem I had with a lot of horror movies in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. Nobody was scared. A real person, if they see a maniac killing somebody, they're going to be scared and run away. You don't stand and fight them. It's stupid. Try to get away. It was funny in Jason Takes Manhattan, which we'll review at some point. Where the boxer tried to fight him. It made sense in the context of that character. It was an individual character, and it worked. But in this, they all kind of acted tough to Freddy, like, yeah, I can take you, Freddy. Really? You know this guy kills people in real life. You know he's murdered all of your friends in their dreams. And you think you're going to somehow just smack talk him to death? Again, it's not scary at all. It's funny. By this point, Freddy had become a pop culture phenomenon, and he was going into, little kids knew who Freddy was. They were really toning it down. They were trying to make this a mass market thing, kind of like they did with the Toxic Avenger, another strange one they marketed to kids, and Rambo even had a cartoon. The end of 4 leaves us with Freddy once again being destroyed, and maybe he's gone now? Of course not, because that movie made a bunch of money too. And yet again, 1 year later, we're stuck with The Dream Child. The only good thing I can say with Dream Child is it did pick up where 4 left off. She's still around with her boyfriend from part 4, and now she's pregnant. And for some reason, Freddy got into her body when he was destroyed at 4, and he's been hiding there, and he wants to be reborn in her baby. Why? But apparently that'll let him back into the real world, and that's how he has to get in. But wait. When the baby dreams, Freddy has more powers than he's ever had before. Because now, not only does the person doesn't seem to have to be dreaming. As long as the baby is dreaming, Freddy can attack whoever he wants. Okay, great. I can't really say anything good about that movie. It's really bad. There's a comic book killing, which is neat from a technical perspective. The special effects are kind of cool, but it's stupid. Again, he becomes super powered, and the kid becomes his favorite comic book character, tries to fight Freddy. Freddy becomes Super Freddy, and, at this point, it's like watching a parody. End of the movie rolls around, And this really got to me. They start talking about Amanda Kruger again. And same backstory, she was, raped by all these maniacs, and that's where Freddy came from. But in part 3, we saw her tombstone. Okay, we're led to believe that's where she was buried, right? Well, apparently, no. After having a baby, working as a nun, they don't bury you. They let you go sit in a room in a tower. Now, what's strange is it's not even the tower where she is at we're led to believe is the same tower as in part 3. Completely different hospital, completely different tower, and it's run down. It looks like it's got lights, from the 40s. The entire structure's like from the 40s. Not what we saw in part 3, but we're supposed to believe this is the same hospital. Same attached tower where she was raped by the maniacs. So already, huge problem. It's like, you guys you couldn't get a hospital that looked the same? But then, for some reason, they have to free her earthly corpse. Well, if she had a tombstone in a cemetery, isn't the corpse in there? They don't say it isn't. You could have written that out and said they dig up the coffin. No corpse there. Okay, but even still, the final scene to free her, they go into the tower. There's a bricked up wall that has to be broken into because it's been walled up, and there's a nun's skeleton kneeling in it against open windows. Okay, so first of all, she went and kneeled in this room to look out the window. She kneeled and died in a kneeling position and then remained there for 60 plus years, and then somebody along the way came and walled it up? Why? Wait. Are they punishing her for having the baby? Did they say, go sit in here and repent and we're going to wall this up? Maybe. But there's open windows in the room. Why would you brick up a room that had open windows? That doesn't even make sense. Are you hiding it? There's open windows. So, 5 is stupid. That's what I'm going to say with that. Given 5 had tons of production problems. Stephen Hopkins directed it. He complained that he had no time. It was way too rushed. There was no way he could make the movie he wanted in that time. Yeah, the movie sucks, but he did go on to make some other okay movies. You can kind of say the same thing about all of his. Predator 2, Judgment Night, great soundtrack. But given the financial lack of success for 5, they waited a while before making Freddy's Dead. This came out in 91. Freddy's Dead, they let Rachel Talalay direct it. She had been a producer and worked on, I think, almost every installment in the Nightmare series. So she took over the directing reins, and the gimmick for this was it had a 3D section. And in the theater it did. You got your 3D glasses, and as you go through the movie, Yaphet Kotto tells you when to put, that you're going to have to wear these 3D glasses. Now, in the movie itself, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Now, the 3D effect is kind of cool. It was fun in the theater to watch. Again, the movie, once again, wow, the continuity makes no sense at all. You got this kid who thinks he's Freddy's son, and he can't escape this town that they go to, and he finds some other lady who works at another mental hospital with all these kids that have been affected by Freddy. Well, come to find out, this town is where Freddy lived, but it doesn't look like the other towns. They have the one house that appears to be when they go into a dream state, but it's not. It doesn't look anything like it. And all the kids have been missing from this town because it's 10 years later it's 10 years after Nightmare on Elm Street. And there's some odd cameos. Tom Arnold and Rosanne Barr appear in it. So the doctor is supposed to be Freddy's daughter, who was taken from him, and now he wants her back. He apparently made all these different gloves. He kills his wife because she finds the gloves, and then he had a daughter, and they took her away, so that's why he started killing the kids. I guess you could kind of weasel that in with the other continuity that Wes had, but it's unneeded and silly. It's better than 5, but not much. He's always wisecrack. It's better than 5, but not by much. He's always making jokes. He's playing a video game, Nintendo, to kill one of the kids. he loses a controller and actually says, "You forgot the Power Glove," which had come out, I think, a year or two before that. It's bad. At the end of the movie, they confront the Dream Demons because they give Freddy power now. I guess they were supposed to be the guys that gave him the power to be the Gate Guardian. It's really convoluted. They fight, they bring him back into the real world, and they kill Freddy, and Freddy's dead. Kept him dead for a little bit. That's about the best I can think of. This poor series just went downhill, and by this point, Freddy was so silly. He wasn't scary at all. I love Robert Englund. I mean, I can watch him cracking jokes as Freddy, but it's not good in a horror movie. It's more of a comedy. So I guess at this point, New Line didn't know what to do. They sat around, they wanted to do something to finally end the series, I guess, better. And 3 years later, in '94, we get Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I like New Nightmare. It was... You got Wes back. He wanted to do something different with the character. You got everybody, John Saxon, Heather Langenkamp, and Robert Shea is in it. Plenty of them. They're all playing themselves, and they're making the final Freddy movie, but that actually brings the real Freddy into the real world. The kid is... he's been in a bunch of stuff. According to IMDb, I didn't recognize him. He's not too annoying. Always a plus. Most kids in these kind of movies drive me insane. And Langenkamp's acting, top notch. She did a lot of TV between the original Nightmare on Elm Street and this one a decade later. And Wes's idea of saying, screw all these crap-ass sequels, let's do something different, genius. Freddy, again, he's a horrifying figure. He's scary. It's something you can almost relate to. What if something like this happened? You age the characters. She's no longer a teenager being mistrusted by adults. Now she's a mother in fear of her child. And he plays that in a way that it works. It's frightening. It's exciting. Music is top-notch. Shirley Walker did the score. There's some really good score throughout the whole movie. There's some good kills. And in the end, when it's over, I feel like that was a good end to the Nightmare on Elm Street series. It was a pleasurable end. I had fun. It was somewhat scary and exciting throughout, and something new. It wasn't as... It didn't seem contrived. It wasn't a rehash. It was nice to see Wes end his own character in such a way. So I definitely recommend that one. It'd be nice to see some other directors come back and end their characters. Halloween. And that'd be really cool. But, so, there you have it. That's Nightmare on Elm Street series. So, what do I give the ratings? The original, Nightmare on Elm Street, solid 9 out of 10. Freddy's Revenge, Part 2. I'm going to sit that around a 6 out of 10. Dream Warriors, Part 3, 7 out of 10. The Dream Master, Part 4, 5 out of 10. The Dream Child, Part 5, 3 out of 10. Freddy's Dead, Part 6, I'll go with a 4 out of 10, strictly for the neat 3D. And Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Give that an 8 out of 10. Now, I got this box set here. This is, if you notice, this is the British release. I didn't wait for the US release. They are the same transfers. They have all the same extras. You get all 7 movies on here. All of them are in high def. The quality varies between films. Some are a little softer than others. But the extras, there's a slew of extras on here. The only thing missing is the great Nightmare on Elm Street documentary, which is coming out on Blu-ray later this year in the States. And, so you're never going to get a 4K restore of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. So I'm going to have to say, for a box set and value, 9.5 out of 10. This is a good box set. It's a good value. Tons of extras. Half point off just because some of the transfers aren't as good as it could have been. They're a little soft on the focus and not quite... You know, I know someone's doing the film age. They could have done a little better on especially parts like 4 and 5, but, you know, 1 looks as it's going to look without doing a full restore of it, for sure. The 7 was a little soft, too. It kind of bugged me. 1 is on its own disc. All the rest are doubled up on the disc, so, yeah, there you have it. On Elm Street. I had the pleasure of watching this whole series with someone who had never seen any of them. So if you can do that, it's actually pretty fun. Get their take on it, see what they think. Someone who hasn't seen them is pretty rare, honestly. I hope you enjoyed this review of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and we look forward to seeing you here next time at Movie Mayhem. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, share with your friends, give them some comments, anything else you want to see us take a look at, and we'll get right on that.